embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other. Om Bhurbhuvasvaha Om Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuvasvaha Om Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuvasvaha Om Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Om Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrutyorma Amrutangamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We are, I think, I remember we were on shlokas 12 and 13. I remember having that, but anyway, we will once more revise 12 and 13. I shall read the shlokas and then we will also read the translation and commentary. Lobhaha pravrittirarambhaha karmanam ashamaha spruha rajasyetani jayante vivruddhe bharatarshava. Aprakasho pravrittischa pramado moha evacha tamasyetani jayante vivruddhe kurunandana. The translation is greed, impulse to activity, initiative tendency, and unsubdued urge to do works. These, O best of the Bharatas, Arjuna, arise on the increase of rajas. And the commentary says, it is therefore full of unrest and fever and lust and greed and excitement, a thing of seeking impulsions, and all this mounts in us when the middle guna increases. It is the force of desire which motives all ordinary personal initiative of action and all that movement of stir and seeking and propulsion in our nature, which is the impetus towards action and works, pravritti. Rajas then is evidently the kinetic force in the modes of nature. Then 13. Obscurity, dullness, negligence and delusion. These, O Kurunandana, Arjuna, arise on the increase of tamas. It is the darkness of tamas which obscures knowledge and causes all confusion and delusion, and therefore it is the opposite of sattva. But tamas brings incapacity and negligence of action, as well as the incapacity and negligence of error, inattention and misunderstanding or non-understanding, indolence, languor, and sleep belong to this guna. Therefore, it is the opposite to of rajas. Tamas is inertia or of nescience and inertia of inaction, a double negative. This we have actually done these two, but because it's been quite some time, we will just do some basic revision. See, the description given of the gunas rajas and tamas is essentially for our understanding our own nature. See, these things, the biggest problem with all of us is we are essentially inattentive. We are essentially inattentive. Do we understand this or not? Our mind is wavering. Our thoughts are rapidly, emerging and going out and then getting mixed up. And there is a general tendency to consider this as something natural, which is not the case actually. This is something which we have acquired and accumulated over long periods of time and converted that into our own nature. That is why each one behaves in a different manner. Each one, his thoughts, his feelings, his expressions, his words, everything differs, but the undercurrent which is common to all of us is that we are inattentive, which is a very serious tamasic nature, which is a serious aspect in as far as tamas is concerned. So that is one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is that we have been somehow trained to think that one needs to do something. One needs to fend for oneself. And that living is a struggle. Daily life is a conflict. Greed is something acceptable. And the mind tries to justify and say, reasonable greed is okay. Like reasonable amount of poison. There is nothing called reasonableness in this. If we do not understand the nature of greed, if we do not understand the nature of our restlessness, our activity, the impulse to do something, because for most of us, this aspect of greed, impulse to activity, the tendency of engaging oneself in work, initiating all kinds of activities, is the only means to suggest that I am alive. If I don't do any of these things, it gives a sense of inadequacy and we feel as though we are not really alive. See how subtle things influence us. Our education, whatever information has been fed into us, how our, slowly our cultural roots were destroyed, how things which are absolutely unnecessary have become important. It's not blaming somebody or some culture or the other, but there is a marked distinction between cultures. And at one point of time, that appears to be the most important thing. See, the older the culture, the greater is the, what do you call, a sense of complacence and, losing relevance. That is the reason why, while the culture may be very old, the civilization may be very old, one needs to rejuvenate and live that culture rather than simply accumulate it and live like a storehouse of all dead things. This rejuvenation never happened, and we were uprooted by invasions, by so many kinds of cultures coming and essentially, uh, a kind of a cauldron. You put everything into it and boil it, and something happens in it. So you see the point now, as was mentioned in some other context, the general tendency is to be active. And that word active is misunderstood. Activity need not necessarily be for a definite goal or objective or motive, but in order to maintain a kind of equilibrium. Can you just hold on for a minute? So you see, the Professor Ravi Ravindra was in some context mentioning about the Western mindset and the Eastern mindset. It's not derogatory of one or the other, but to bring to our notice the stark difference of approach to things. The Western approach would be to say, why are you sitting idly? Why don't you do something? Whereas the Eastern approach is, why are you always doing something? Why can't you keep quiet? Binaji, you want to say something?
I'm sorry, I wanted you to finish and I was looking for chat because I had two questions after you finish.
Okay, please.
Yeah.
You put it in the chat?
I'll do it.
Okay. Yeah.
Kiji, don't wait for me. I'll take time. So
okay. Well, it doesn't matter. Okay.
yeah.
So you see, as I said, the approach has to be understood, because we are talking about an inward movement. See, an inward movement basically requires an outward quietude to start with. Now, when the Rajasic guna is predominating, this is what happens. Pravrittihi, the outgoing movement, the impulse to do things. That pravritti has to be converted to inward movement. That is nivritti. That's why at the very beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, in the preamble, Adi Shankara talks about pravritti and nivritti. Pravritti is that worldly activity. Nivritti is that withdrawal from worldly activity. As long as Rajasic guna predominates, it will compel us to move in the outward direction. Compels us to move in the outward direction, to do something in the world, to become something, actively engage in some activity, in something or the other. These, he says, arise on the increase of rajas. These type of things arise in us, greed. Most of our things, if you remember, or just try to observe oneself, one can see that there is a subtle element of greed. It may not be very overt. It could be in a very subtle, insidious, very surreptitious manner where we are greedy of so many things. Sridhu Krishnamurti goes to the extent of saying that the tendencies in us which want to project oneself as unique. I am well read. I have read so many books. I have written so many books. I have done that. I have done this. In order to show to the world that I am unique. I am not like everybody else. That's a very subtle form of projecting oneself, being engaged in activity. Whereas the Bhagavad Gita itself talks about withdrawal. There is a very beautiful statement by one of the masters of the wisdom in the theosophical literature, which says the master advises a disciple and says, you should be as though you are nothing in the eyes of the world. That means totally inconspicuous. The world doesn't know you. They don't even know that you exist. Because after all, it is of no consequence to you from a spiritual perspective. So one should be as though one is nothing in the eyes of the world. You want to be a part of the society. You want to be a part of the community. You want to be a part of the larger entity. You may call it as a nation or a country or something else or something else. This desire to be somebody, something, and belonging and projecting oneself as unique is a rajasic element and generally detrimental to what is recognized as the fundamentals of spiritual life. This is how the Rajasic Guna manifests. Why I am dwelling upon this from a different angle is to impress upon oneself that we do not recognize the fact that this Rajasic element is so powerful and constantly operating in us. Do we recognize that fact? That has to be seriously recognized, not simply recognized and brushed aside and continue again, because that's what normally happens. And then, when it comes to tamasic nature, it is aprakasha, unenlightened, darkness, obscurity, apravritti, dullness. See, both are wrong. You see, pravritti is also a problem and apravritti is also a problem. The term that is generally used by, again, Jiddu Krishnamurti, when he talks about these things is passive alertness, which requires tremendous energy. One is totally alert, at the same time passive. So it is neither pravritti nor apravritti. Then pramada. Pramada is negligence, inattention, moha, delusion. These four comprise of The tamasic element, the tamasic guna, which is on the rise. Tamasyeta nijayante vivruddhe kurunandana. The point again to be understood is that there is a fine balance one needs to strike in order to avoid falling either into the rajasic influence of the rajasic guna or the influence of the tamasic guna. Not doing anything doesn't mean sleeping. Not doing anything doesn't mean that neglecting things which are to be done. That's the fine balance. One needs to understand that very carefully. So you see, he goes on to bring out, I think last time we discussed this, but again, very importantly, these three gunas have a kind of a triangular relationship. You take sattva, rajas, and tamas. Tamas is opposed to both rajas and sattva. Not simply opposing one, but opposing both. That's what very beautifully Sri Aurobindo says, it is a double negative. Tamas is inertia of nescience, that is ignorance, and inertia of inaction. Nescience or ignorance is the opposite of sattva, which is connected to enlightenment, which is connected to the light of wisdom, illuminating all the senses. So that is the opposite of that, nescience, inertia of nescience. Then there is the inertia of inaction, which is the opposite of rajas. So very beautifully he brings about and says, brings incapacity and negligence of action and incapacity and negligence of error. Pramada is that. That's what is to be understood here. So recognizing these factors in us very clearly, the recognition should be real and tangible in some ways. Then only it makes sense. Otherwise, we take it for granted. Yeah, I have these problems, sir. I have these issues with. I know the issues. You ask a drug addict or an alcoholic or anybody else also, he says, yeah, I know I have this problem, but I can't really help it. So similarly, we have so many things in us which are of the same nature. Some of these things which I have talked about are considered socially bad or bad for the community or the society, and therefore we may not be indulging in that, but we are indulging in so many other things which are also bad for the society and for us also. Luckily for most of us, because they are inside us and they don't manifest out very frequently, we also do not give importance to it and neglect them. So you have to work on every aspect of one's own self. In the sense, working means, first of all, becoming totally aware of it. Being alert to the self. That's how you discover yourself. If you first look at your superficial, one's own superficial aspects, then that awareness itself will take you to a deeper level, where the causes of the superficial behavior lie. Another thing which we might have noticed, because most of them, except maybe for one or two, most of us are senior citizens, we have, over a period of time, we have become rigid. Rigid in our thinking, rigid in our habits, rigid in our behavior. So everything gets crystallized. There is nothing dynamic. That is precisely on account of being inattentive and taking things for granted and losing all enthusiasm for that inner movement. Outwardly, yeah, I am doing, yeah, what are you doing, sir? I'm just, yeah, I'm happy going on here. Morning I go for a walk, evening I do something, I read Bhagavad Gita, I read that, I listen to this, I do that. But has it brought about any kind of transformation in me? That transformation is not progressive. Transformation comes only when you recognize and when you see the things as they are. It is instantaneous. Either you see or you don't see. You can't say, I vaguely see, I vaguely know about it. No, theory part of it I know, but practically I can't do it. Even in children, I am finding the same thing. Children also talk about, they know what is right, what is wrong. But then they want to do whatever their passion, whatever their interest, whatever their, propensities are there, it drives them. So this is one important thing which has to be recognized when the qualities or the aspects of the Rajasic Guna or Tamasic Guna are explained. It should not be merely seen as a kind of an explanation. It has the deeper significance of relating to oneself and understanding, yes, what is the nature of greed that is prevailing in me, that is that's imbued in me. What is the nature of this movement, outward movement? What is this nature of clinging to things? What is this disquiet and restlessness in me? Ashamaha. Shama is mental poise or mental quietude. Ashamaha is the opposite of that. Restlessness, disquiet. So one needs to go into oneself very carefully, very thoroughly, and know one's own nature. Let's not do anything about it right now. Let's not reject or accept or condemn or justify or do anything. Recognize the fact that this is there in me. That recognition itself is going to be a great revelation. That recognition itself has a transformative quality. But if you justify or condemn or accept or reject or do something, then nobody can really help you. Binaji, I'll come to your questions now. Action is always derived in a Rajasic state of mind, but in Sattvic state of mind, we also had. The difference seems to be in who we are doing the action for. If it is for our greed, it's Raja, but if we do it for the divine, it is Sattvic, even if it is bodily action. Is that right? You mentioned we are essentially inattentive. That is correct. We need to be attentive in the moment all the time. Okay. with this episode of cancer, I'm hoping to relook at myself and reinvent myself to drop rigidity and use usual routine to bring down whatever the stress is that created this in the first place. Yeah, that's a, uh, unfortunately, I'm addressing your third question first. Unfortunately, for most of us, some untoward event or incident jolts us into reality, or throws up the what one would call as a kind of situation which we have never encountered earlier, and therefore it upsets all our life. The entire life is something, it's upset. That's true. Coming back to your first question, see, in the Sattvic case, as I said, it is not a question of action alone. We are supposed to do action, we will do action. In all cases, we will be doing action. Action is not the issue. As you pointed out, one aspect of it is the center from which we are acting. If the I or the me becomes a strong center, and if action is flowing from that center, obviously the center is looking for its own gratification. But if the center is fluid, if the center is weakened, then the action that flows out of it is something which is required to act. I am doing action which is required of me. Here what is happening is the intelligence is guiding us. Hello? Oh, I see. Okay. Okay, please, thank you. Sorry, Binaji got disconnected, it seems. So I'll not answer her questions right now. We will take up some other discussion, and then when Binaji is back, I think then we'll be able to take up the questions. Any other point, Janakiramji?
No, presently nothing.
Okay, Ramchandranji? Ramchandranji? Or Sarangiji?
Nothing specific, Sarji.
I got a small point.
Okay, Ramchandranji, yeah.
Nothing specific, Sarji.
Okay, but my point is, have I made myself clear that it is a process of self-discovery?
True.
Knowing about these gunas is
Yes.
not to be treated as some kind of information or inputs for our own, for the sake of enhancing our knowledge.
True.
So it has to be lived. It has to be understood. One needs to go into oneself and identify what is happening. Vinaji, you are back? Okay. So what I was saying is, with regard to the Rajasic action and the Sattvic action, Rajasic action mostly happens with the center which I call as the I or the me, is very strong, and everything is motivated to gratify that center. That's how greed also operates. So if that center is weakened, if that center is fluid, then what happens is one is moves to perform action which is dictated by the intelligence which comes into operation. Then what happens is whatever action you do will be the right action. So that is the difference between the Rajasic and the Sattvic aspect. But the Sattvic aspect also, if you understand, it also is bound by Sukha and Jnana. Please recall verse number 6. It also derives some kind of pleasure, joy, happiness, or whatever you may call, and also a sense of achievement in the form of jnana. So sukha and jnana are the binding factors. Sukha and jnana are the binding factors. That is the reason why we are asked to go beyond the three gunas. Because sattva is also binding in nature. One needs to become triguna essentially to be free of all kinds of bondage. And when I said about inattention, generally we are inattentive. We don't see things as a child sees, especially when I'm now playing with my grandson. His vision is totally different. He sees small things. He sees different colors. He sees patterns which are not visible to us because our mind is engaged. Our mind is otherwise engaged. So what happens? We are inattentive to the surroundings also. So JK calls this as choiceless awareness. JK calls this as choiceless awareness. That's what is important. You have no choice. You are aware of the total completely. And about your third question, it is sometimes, these upheavals, there's some kind of events or incidents which turn everything topsy-turvy, come in one's life, which is a lesson, which is a good thing in one way, because we have taken things for granted for too long. And when nothing really happens, it gives us a sense of complacence and also makes us think that we have been doing reasonably well. In most of the cases, when it comes to the body, when I was discussing with some eminent physicians and doctors, they said the body tries to manage itself to the maximum extent possible without giving any symptoms. Most of our organs do not really give out any signal till almost 60 or 70% of damage has been caused. If I get myself tested now, and if the doctor certifies that as far as the tests are concerned, everything is fine, it does not mean that tomorrow I'm not going to have a heart attack. It has no predictive power. It has only an indicative power. It only indicates that as of now, at this moment, things appear to be okay. And all these tests are also have a limitation of their own. Whether your blood test or your ultrasound test or MRI or a CAT scan or whatever it is only indicative. It has an error factor. Like even now, see, we have this problem with RT-PCR now. This COVID test, they say the reliability is only 60%. That is, in case of 40%, it could go either way. A fellow who doesn't have it, it may show up as though he has it. A fellow who has it, it may show up as though he doesn't have it. That means it could be erratic. Most of these things are again statistical models or probabilistic models, and therefore there is a large error factor in that. So you see, so that is the reason why we do not really know what is happening inside our body. for all the things we have done. We may think now it's okay, today I'm fine. I had some small issue, I have taken some medicine and things are okay. It's not okay. It could be something else. We don't even know about it. So that is what is to be recognized. Have I addressed your questions adequately, Binaji?
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So the word is being choicelessly aware of
Choiceless
everything.
awareness. Got it.
That's a beautiful term which he has coined long back.
Yeah.
So that is uh, tells us the know, the nature of consciousness, the very nature of consciousness. It tells us about it. Umesh ji, are you there? Can you unmute yourself?
Yes,
Yes, sir. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, sir.
When are you returning to India?
Uh, God blessing sometime in October, September, October.
Oh, long, another 6 months to go almost.
Yeah, I have few things to finish here as well. So
Okay.
we plan to come make it about 7
So are you
September.
are you planning to acquire Australian citizenship or something?
I am on the way. I've got already the visa to stay here
Okay.
permanently.
Okay.
So I have to take
Good.
visa to travel to India.
Okay.
So but we're planning to come in September and be
Okay.
there at least for at least 6 months.
Good. So any
Yes,
questions from your side?
yes, sir. I have a question. It
Yes,
is
please.
connected to what we are talking, but it's not really the same subject. My question, sir, is this: we're talking about gunas, and as we understand that gunas are all three gunas in different combinations and permission is with us.
Yeah.
Is it true that if we stay in awareness every moment, that certain actions or thoughts or words are out of what guna? And if we come to a realization that I have taken this action or response or had the thought, which is really not a satya guna or rajas, but it's tamasic.
Yeah.
If by being aware of it, does that help? Does that bring about the some amount of change in our
See,
operation, our conduction?
see, yeah. See, I again want to bring to your notice. We keep forgetting these things, and that's why it's important to reiterate. You know, being aware of the nature of guna by itself is not sufficient. See,
Mm.
I have used earlier three terms: sensitivity, intensity, and urgency.
Mm.
See,
Mm.
why I bring in Jiddu Krishnamurti repeatedly is because he has exactly pinpointed what is the issue.
Mm.
See, being aware should make us sensitive, and there should be that required intensity, not being
Mm.
superficially aware of it. No, deep down, with all intensity, with all our energy, with the tremendous amount of energy, am I aware of it? And
Mm.
is there that sense of urgency in us?
Mm.
No, see, physically we experience these things. If I put something very hot in your hand, what do?
Sensation.
You drop it down immediately, isn't it?
Yes.
You don't think about it. You
Yes.
don't say, consider, is this, can I bear this heat or not? Will it burn me? What will happen to my skin? Or let me try and bear to the extent possible. It doesn't do that, isn't it?
Yes.
There is an urgency,
That's fine.
and there is a sensitivity to the hand. It doesn't
Yes.
want anything unpleasant.
Yes.
So psychologically, can we have the same level of sensitivity, intensity, and urgency? then only the transformation happens. Otherwise, if I am aware that, yeah, I am angry, these fellows disturb me. Eh? Just before starting the meeting also, I was having some, heated discussion. So what happens? Being aware of it doesn't make much difference. After the meeting, I'll continue.
Right.
Point I am trying to make is, has it brought about that sensitivity in me, that intensity and that urgency in me or not? The approach should be that. Without that approach, any amount of superficial awareness, any amount of mental awareness, any kind of recognition at whatever level it is happening is of no consequence. Do you understand this?
Yes, sir. So,
The transformation happens only when these three things are there.
Understood, sir. Just going little further on this,
Yeah.
if there is a clarity, there is a sensitivity, but if there is no intensity, is that a result or is that the effect of some kind of force that is
Obviously,
preventing?
it's a result of tamas.
So
See,
what is
inertia of negligence, inertia of nescience and inertia of inaction. You are aware of it, but you don't want to do anything about it. You understand the point?
So what one is aware of it, one wants to make a correction of
Think of correction first. Are you sensitive to it or not?
Okay.
First of all. Otherwise, we miss so many things in life.
Yes.
Unless we are sensitive to everything,
Yes.
we will miss so many things in life. Unless one has that intensity, one cannot even look at it, think of it.
Candace,
And there should be that urgency.
take.
There should be that urgency also.
Chico, Faye, come
Yeah,
some.
so there's something that is
Some noise is there background. Anyway, I think Binaji has some connectivity problem. Anyway, so you do you understand these three things now?
Yes, sir.
Why transformation doesn't happen? Because it is like the weed. There's an interesting illustration or example that is given of the giant weed. This giant weed completely obscures the lake. We have a peculiar plant which grows in the water called water hyacinth. I don't know if you have it or in Bangalore also it could be there. It has been there. Some English lady brought it from England because she liked it and put it in the water body here. Now what happens is slowly the whole water body is occupied by this plant. And removing it is a nuisance. You can't eradicate it totally. The municipal authorities spend lakhs and lakhs of rupees and clean it. After a few weeks or few months, it's back again. That is the problem with us also.
Yeah.
It's like this giant weed which occupies the whole of our consciousness. You can't remove parts of it. You do it. You and I regularly do. We remove parts of it, but that doesn't really help you. Is there a possibility of completely eradicating it? The answer is yes. And that happens only when you have this sensitivity, intensity, and urgency. Otherwise, it's not possible.
But yet it says that the goal is to go transcend all three gunas.
Yes.
So I wonder how that is, because this is inherent nature of the
Yeah.
life.
No,
And
see,
everything.
the sensitivity as it grows in you,
Yes.
the tamasic element will reduce and the rajasic and sattvic elements may go up. As you become more sensitive, the rajasic will also get attenuated or weakened and the sattvic will improve. So progressively, it is like the three states of matter. One is solid, the other is liquid, and the third is gaseous. So the solid has to become liquid, liquid has to become gas, and gas has to simply evaporate. So this is
So
solid is your tamasic nature, the liquid is the rajasic nature, and the gaseous nature is the sattvic nature. So see why this progressive suggestion is given is in order to understand the difficulty of it, because there can't be anything really progressive from a psychological point of view. Even you see, you remember I have given a quote earlier, long time back. Even if you have an iota of hatred towards anybody, you have completely closed all doors for love to manifest in you. An iota of hatred for anybody or anything precludes one from allowing that love to descend. You can't say that I hate this and I love that in the true sense of the term. So you see, like the a lot of spiritual literature has this domestic or household examples. If you have a bucket full or a vessel full of milk, and you put one small piece of salt in it, what happens? The whole milk will be spoiled. The quantum of salt is very little, but its effect is tremendous. The quantum of hatred in us may be very small, but its effect is so tremendous that it occupies our entire consciousness. So several kinds of a drop of poison. The same domestic example, household example is given in the spiritual literature, that you have a big vessel full of milk and you put a drop of poison in it. What happens? The entire milk gets poisoned. No part of the milk remains unaffected by the poison. You can't say that I dropped the poison at this end of the milk and I can use this part of the milk. No. So you see the problem now. You see why the Krishnamurti repeatedly said you can't cultivate love, you can't cultivate humility, you can't cultivate compassion. You need not actually cultivate them. What is important is you remove all the impediments which are there, which are stopping these things from manifesting. You have closed the doors, you have closed the windows, you have closed everything.
So this is Krishnapani ji. All these things you mentioned are really part of our essential nature,
Yes.
but we clouded it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to listen. See, it's unpleasant to me.
Yeah.
So that's why, see, that's the reason why Krishnamurti says, all of us, when somebody says, look at that beautiful flower, he'll look at it because it gives him pleasure. But can you look at the squalor? Can you look at dirt? Can you look at that's also part of our own environment, isn't it? Being choicelessly aware is that. Don't be selective. You have to recognize that fact. See, if there's something unpleasant in me, I don't want to look at it. I know that I am like this, I am a scoundrel. But I don't want to look at that part of me. And I want to project that I am a very great man. I am a noble person. That is where the conflict has already started. This contradiction has given rise to conflict. And I am happy living in this conflict. I'm happy that Binaji doesn't know about this aspect of me. But how long can I hide it from myself? When the journey is inside, there is that Christian prayer which says, Almighty God, unto whom all hearts are open, from whom no secrets are hid. It is not an external person. We are externalizing and saying there is a God who knows everything that is in my heart and nothing is hid from it. No, it is me. Trying to understand the nature of my mind. You can't hide your own self from yourself, isn't it? That is ridiculous, but we do it. We do it in the sense that we don't give importance to that, we don't allow that to manifest, or we don't want it to come out, we cover it up, we disguise it with something else, and then continue to live. And at the end of the day, we wonder why there is no transformation, why things are like this. They are like that because we are like that. So you see, again coming back to the essential message of the Bhagavad Gita, which I have been saying earlier also, is this process of purification and exhaustion of karma. Whole structure is built around that. Purification is becoming sensitive, becoming intense. Then only you clean it, or the cleansing happens. When I don't even recognize that there is this kind of dirt in one corner of the room, I'll not clean it till it becomes disproportionately large and starts stinking. Till that I don't return to it. This is the problem. Then,
Sir,
yeah.
sir, I just I don't know, it reminds me of when you say for transformation, sensitivity, intensity, and urgency, it reminds me of aspiration, rejection, and surrender.
No, the word is not important, madam.
Okay.
What I'm saying is the word is not important. The word sensitivity is not giving us sensitivity. Deep down, am I able to sense it? You understand the point?
Okay, sir. Okay.
See, that's why I gave you the example of touching something hot. Nobody needs to tell you about Advaita Vedanta or Bhagavad Gita when you are touching something hot that it will burn you. Similarly, in the same manner, can it happen at a psychological level? Physical level, we have evolved, we have come to a certain level, we know what it is. But can it be true from the psychological point of view also? The word, whether you call it as aspiration, recognition, surrender, rejection, or surrender, or sensitivity, intensity, I'm not, don't give too much of importance to the word.
Words.
The meaning that it conveys to you is more important. That's why it's like asking you to close your nose and don't breathe and see how long you can survive. That experience is real, isn't it? The experience of hunger, the experience of thirst, the experience of breathing air in and out. If these things are prevented, or if they are not, if they don't happen properly, what is my state of being? That is similar to that. I should be psychologically or mentally sensitive, intense, and urgent about these things. That's the only point I'm trying to make. Okay, madam?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. So anything further, or shall we close it here? we will take up the verses 14 onwards next time. That will be on 9th of April. 2nd of April happens to be Ugadi and I will not be available. And most of you also would be celebrating the lunar calendar New Year, especially for Andhra, Telangana, Karnataka. Karnataka also it is a New Year, isn't it? So we will be meeting again on the 9th. If there is no further discussion or points, shall we close it now? Okay.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so
Especially Krishnapani sir.
much. Thank you, sir.
Thank
So-
you, Krishnaphani ji. I'm so glad that you're drilling this into our heads. I really like the repetition and everything because it really is sinking in. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
We will be
Krishnaphani.
looking forward to your class again on 9th.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Binaji, it's actually a self-reminder to me. I am no different from you, or maybe worse than most of you. So, because I know what I am. No,
That is your blessing.
I may
Sarji,
pose to be a good person before you, but I know what I am. So it is
There is a
a.
blessing.
It reminds us of who we are also. So
Yeah, everybody.
you will
Yeah, Ramchandran ji.
It's a great.
Sir, you have touched the core, the very core of our ignorance, sir.
Yeah, we are all sailing in the same boat.
Yes, yes, you have touched the very core, and we realize how much of knowledge and light we need.
Yes, yes, all of us. So let us pray for all of us to be in some way influenced. But this is a continuous thing. It has to
Yes.
be lived from moment to moment. So we'll close with the Loka Samasta.
Thank you very much, Krishnaphani ji.
Thank you,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Guruji.
Sarji.
Thank you. ॐ स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्यः परिपालयन्तां न्याय्येन मार्गेण महीं महिषाः गोब्राह्मणेभ्यः शुभमस्तु नित्यं लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ तत्सद्ब्रह्मार्पणमस्तु श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु. Thank you so much. We'll meet again on 9th of April. Thank you.